and 49 Americans were killed. Despite the overwhelming victory, there was also an unsettling aspect about this engagement. In a letter to the commandant, General Vandegrift wrote, "I have never heard of this kind of fighting. These people refuse to surrender. The wounded wait until men come up to examine them and then blow themselves and the other fellow to pieces with a hand grenade." While Marines defended Henderson Field on the ground, the Cactus Air Force defended the skies above. Cactus was the Navy code word for Guadalcanal. Thus, the combined Marine, Navy, and Army Air Force squadrons assigned to Henderson Field quickly came to be known as the Cactus Air Force. During those critical early days, the Coast Watchers, planted deep inside enemy-held territory and supported by loyal islanders, continued to play a decisive part. General Morrell.
We learned about that almost immediately because we were fortunate to have those Coast Watchers. They were just like modern-day radar almost, because all the raids had to come down the slot from the northern part of the Solomon Islands, and the Coast Watchers were on the various islands there, and they could spot these Japanese air raids coming down, and they notified us. Fortunately, we were able to get in the air. The fact that we were able to get up into the air and get sufficient altitude to attack the incoming raids. Now, the raids were at what in those days was high altitude, probably up around 30,000 feet. So obviously, if we hadn't been able to get up in the air by the time the raids had reached the area of Henderson Field, they would have delivered their bombs and turned around and long gone.
The conditions under which Cactus pilots and ground crews subsisted were at best marginal. With only the most basic equipment and scarce supplies, it took a great deal of ingenuity to keep the planes flying. General Morrell continues.
Well, at night the pilots tried to get some sleep, but they were bothered by Japanese shelling from the Japanese destroyers, which would come in close enough at night to be able to shell the area around the Henderson Field. During the daytime, it would draw and be very difficult to find the destroyers. We had all kinds of experiences by pilots, everything that you can think of. Some of them just wouldn't return from flights. Others would crack up in the field. Others would bail out. Experience that sticks in my mind most of all is the day that I got shot up by a Zero fighter and was hit with an explosive shell in the legs and had to bring that crippled plane back into the field. A lot of losses in a short time, both of airplanes and pilots.
In the meantime, a bizarre tactical situation developed. From sunrise to sunset, thanks to Cactus Air Force, the Allies controlled the air and seas around Guadalcanal. Conversely, from sunset to sunrise, when Cactus pilots couldn't fly, the enemy controlled the surrounding seas. Thus, the Tokyo Express was launched. In just a little over 3 weeks after the disastrous defeat at Tenaru, the Japanese rebuilt their forces on Guadalcanal. Today, 50 years after the Battle for Guadalcanal, this ridge overlooking Henderson International Airport is tranquil. Young people come up here to enjoy the view and sing about love, peace, and little baby Jesus. In 1942, it was an entirely different picture. Retired General Snedeker remembers the critical battle which took place along this ridge during the nights of September 13th and 14th.
The first bombardment of our area by the Japanese forces took place from their location out around Savo Island. Some of the shells had hit in the division command post, Division decided to move the command post to another area which was south of the airfield. Fortunately, when they decided to move a battalion under Merritt Edson, Red Mike, Japs came in force at that night and hit that battalion. But they didn't know the battalion was there, I don't think, there, because we had just gotten there. And they had gone right through division headquarters and into the airfield, and Lord knows what happened then. Edson, as you know, was a great troop leader. He was a great man.
The same day Colonel Edson's Raider Battalion saved Henderson Field, the U.S. Navy suffered a major blow. On a resupply mission to Guadalcanal, the fleet carrier Wasp was torpedoed and sunk. The battleship North Carolina and destroyer O'Brien were also hit and seriously damaged. Back on Guadalcanal, the situation temporarily turned into a shaky stalemate after the battle on Bloody Ridge. Still determined to recapture Henderson, however, the Tokyo Express gained new momentum. Fresh troops and essential materiel were deposited on beaches from Cocumbona to Cape Esperance. Although minor skirmishes occurred here and there, the Marines gradually extended the perimeter, and Navy Seabees continued to improve the landing field. During this period of relative calm at the end of September, Admiral Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief Pacific Fleet, flew to Guadalcanal. October 1st, Nimitz presented Navy crosses to 30 officers and men. Among those who received medals were Colonels Carlson and Edson. Plus Cactus pilots Smith, Magnum, and Carl. Immediately after the ceremony, he returned to Pearl Harbor by way of New Caledonia, where he conferred with Admiral Gormley, Commander South Pacific Area. Shortly thereafter, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Enemy bombers became increasingly aggressive. October 13th and 15th were particularly disastrous. Without the usual warnings from coast watchers, Japanese bombers destroyed a number of aircraft on the ground, damaged the landing strip, and ignited 5,000 gallons of precious aviation gasoline. One especially memorable event, later dubbed the bombardment, or the Night of the Battleships, occurred between 1:33 a.m. and 2:56 a.m. October 14th. Two Japanese battleships, Kongo and Haruna, lobbed 918 14-inch shells at Henderson Field. As a result of this earth-shaking barrage, over half of the 90 Cactus aircraft were either destroyed or severely damaged. On one occasion, however, the Allies managed to bomb the Japanese transport Kyushu Maru as it unloaded men and supplies on Guadalcanal. Receiving reports of disintegrating conditions on Guadalcanal, Admiral Gormley, from his headquarters in New Caledonia, dispatched a message to Admiral Nimitz. "My forces are totally inadequate to meet the situation." Something had to be done, and done quickly. October 18th, while Admiral Bull Halsey was making a tour of the South Pacific, he received a sealed envelope. Inside, he found orders to take command of the South Pacific area. His reaction was typical. Bull Halsey is reputed to have exclaimed, "Jesus Christ and General Jackson, this is the hottest potato they ever handed me." The battle for Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands raged on. The coast watchers and friendly islanders who supported the Allies continued to play important and pivotal roles.
Yes, as a refugee, we were taken to the American front line, and we've done a lot of scouting for the Yankees, and I was with the supply division, moving up supplies up the mountains and carrying up food, water, and carrying back the sick, the wounded, and the dead.
Part 2 continues the saga of the battle for Guadalcanal and the Solomons. For the next month after Admiral Halsey took command of the South Pacific area, the final outcome hovered in doubt. First, the enemy would have the advantage, then the Allies. In early December, the Japanese finally decided to withdraw their weary troops from Guadalcanal. During the next 10 months, many bitter engagements between the Allies and Japanese took place. Before the battle for the Solomons was concluded, however, the Coast Watchers and their local friends ultimately rescued 118 downed pilots and almost 200 sailors. Among Navy men rescued from the Japanese was the future President of the United States, John F. Kennedy.